Welcome to the Tesla Power Podcast, the unofficial Tesla energy community covering solar panels, solar roof, and Powerwall for your home. I'm Aaron Brady. Today, let's talk about peak power on the Powerwall. Let's talk about Tesla residential energy nods on the Q2 earnings call. And let's compare the electricity bills we got in 2020 to 2021. Let's do it. We'll kick it off with questions and comments. If you have a question, comment maybe, leave a comment below. You can also call 203-816-5150, or you can email teslapowerpodcast@gmail.com. Our favorite, Bill Gilbrook, has more detail he's hoping to pull from the community. He writes, anyone know it appears that Powerwall Plus, the DC coupled one, is just the October 20 updated Powerwall 2, the AC coupled version. The only difference would be that it's got an external integrated inverter gateway. Can owners of the updated Powerwall 2s take advantage of the Powerwall 2's higher continuous peak surge levels? I think he meant Powerwall Plus peak surge levels without getting the Powerwall Plus, end quote. Let's pop this thing open and take a look, or let's do the next best thing, take a look at the manual. We have a very, very cool article from Clean Technica. Let me pull that up. They have a Powerwall 2 deep dive. There's some significant detail in this Clean Technica article on the Powerwall 2. I've got the link below. It includes some awesome exploded views. Specifically, let's roll down to it and click on it to get in there. This looks great, right? Gives us a great look at the internal bits of the system, which we're about to dig into. We can see that the Powerwall 2 uses 2170 cells with an active cooling unit. Let me take it full screen. So all the cells are in this bottom portion here, and the active cooling unit, you can see some of the tubes that go into the casing and come back out of the casing on this side. It's hard to see the pump. It's all black on black, but this is a similar architecture that you see in the Tesla inverter. You'll notice from the photos of the outside of the Powerwall Plus that they are identical in these two ways. This whole bottom portion of the system is exactly the same. Where it diverges is where the inverter would have been. It's now broken out and stacked into the portion that also holds the gateway. That's this square above here with the Tesla logo on it. Now, sidebar. You can't get them separately. You can't get the Powerwall Plus, the batteries separately from the inverter and gateway. So I'll continue to assert that this isn't just a DC coupled battery. It's both a DC coupled and an AC coupled battery. This, of course, means that you get the best of both worlds. You get less efficiency loss when storing solar and more power throughput from the inverter. We'll talk about this explicitly in a minute. But there's another piece that we haven't really been talking about. And before we go on, we need to talk about that component that's been left out. It's integral to this dance. It's the rectifier. So Arrow Research has a great explanation of electrical circuits and the components that make them work. I've got a link below. Now, the way I like to remember it is this. So if you take the the electrical input and you invert it one way, you'll need to rectify it to come back the other way. Now, you know what this means if Tesla is no longer having to move from AC back to DC, right? No rectifier required. Fewer parts, lower cost, better efficiency, simpler install, better reliability, so many advantages. So, Bill, I agree. You know, the better way would be the Powerwall Plus. You know, but because your utility hasn't approved metering through your battery, you're having to use the Tesla solar inverter with Powerwall 2. Now, because this architecture is pulling AC into the battery, the comparison to Powerwall Plus inverter, it isn't applicable. There's no need to rectify AC back to DC with the Powerwall Plus. But there's another important detail that really helps snap this into focus. The comparison sheet has a little footnote on the Powerwall Plus power specifications. So let's pull that up. Right here, how Powerwall Plus and Powerwall compare. The power specs are split into two use cases. You'll see on-grid power and backup power. And on the Powerwall Plus side of it, these power ratings are marked with an asterisk. Now you can see, if I take this full screen, the footnotes read full sun, no sun. And you'll see that the higher rating is in the full sun part of the chart. Now, you know what this means, right? It means power isn't coming only from the battery. The power would be combined from both the solar array and the battery simultaneously. But the reason they can be combined on this sheet is because both DC sources are passing through the same inverter. It's a similar reason why the regulations in Massachusetts are a little bit different. It's because of that regulation in the inverter. So this does not happen with Powerwall 2. It only inverts the power coming out of the batteries. This means it's impossible for Powerwall 2 to ever reach the same ratings as the Powerwall Plus. Even if the inverter were to be software updated, the atoms just aren't there to provide the electron flow required. So again, this isn't down to hardware, this is down to architecture. It's really too bad that the utilities and the municipalities aren't able to move more quickly. Shifting over to the Powerwall Plus architecture has a ton of advantages, and these advantages are only going to increase when we get the 4680 cell form factor for batteries. C'est la vie. Let's read some news. So we were treated to some detail on the Tesla energy business during the Tesla earnings call this week. My favorite when listening to the earnings call is the Clean Technica podcast. I have a card and a link so you can get the full treatment yourself. They put out this version that's edited with chapters that really makes it easy to find the content that you need. Now, I've got a couple of clips to share. The first one is on batteries.
Given concerns over cells bottlenecking growth, our target is to grow cell supply ahead of the 50% year-on-year growth targets of the vehicle business and also enable increased energy storage deployments. Our cell suppliers are tracking to double their production in 2022.
It's worth noting, like, if you have a target of a certain number, that doesn't mean it happens like as sure as night follows day. It's a target. If there is some calamity in the world that interrupts the supply chain, then it will be less. The contracts that we have with cell suppliers call for roughly a doubling of cell supply to Tesla in 2022. And we have to juggle these it's a whole bunch of exponential graphs overlaid on top of each other, and small changes in where you are on the x-axis of time can quite substantially change the area under the curve. What we're thinking of doing is, like, depending on, it's basically overshooting on cell supply for vehicles, and then as we have, say, excess cell supply in 1 month or another, then routing that cell output to the Megapack and Powerwall. All by the same token, if we're prioritizing vehicle production, if there's a shortage of cell output for some reason, then we will throttle down Megapack and Powerwall production. So that something's got to give, basically.
Or if there's a disruption to vehicle production,
yes,
we have an outlet for the cell capacity.
I mean, this drives the point home that vehicle production is the priority. As they ramp vehicles, we can expect supply for stationary storage to continue to be constrained. So, as I've mentioned many times, this means prices will probably remain high for per kilowatt hour of home storage until the constraint is alleviated. So let's look at another second clip.
I think long-term, possibly there's a good chance that all stationary storage, that is Powerwall and Megapack, moves to iron. This is most likely the case since you do not need to transport it, and there's less of volume match constraint for stationary storage. So then nickel would be for long-range road transport, ships and aircraft, and that kind of thing.
So I'd say this isn't a surprise, right? I expect those of us that have been lucky enough to receive nickel-based Powerwalls. I mean, it's it's cool that in one respect we have nickel-based chemistry because they're more power dense, but it's that one factor, nickel versus iron, that holds some hope for lowering costs, even as cell production is constrained. Iron cells are made of cheaper chemistries, no cobalt, for example, and they'd contribute to lower costs that could be passed on to the consumer. Let's take a look at a third clip.
Yeah, we are in fact working with our existing suppliers to produce 4680 format cells. You know, this is just a guess right now, but I see us sort of like consolidating around a 4680 nickel-based structural pack for long-range vehicles, and then not necessarily a 4680 format, but some other format for iron-based cells. And so we right now we kind of have the Baskin-Robbins of batteries situation, where we have so many formats and so many chemistries that it's like we've got like 36 flavors of battery at this point. You know, this results in an engineering drag coefficient where each variant of cell chemistry and format requires a certain amount of engineering to maintain it and troubleshoot, and this inhibits our forward progress. So it is going to be important to consolidate to just maybe ideally 2 form factors, maybe 3, but ideally 2, and then just one nickel chemistry and one iron chemistry, and so we don't have to troubleshoot so many different variants.
This is bad news for 4680 coming to Powerwall. If we take this clip and the previous clip at face value, we could probably expect Powerwall to be made with 2170 form factor with iron chemistries for the foreseeable future. So, I don't know. If you also consider that the Powerwall Plus architecture isn't heavily dependent on batteries to provide power throughput, since solar can, essentially bypass the battery into the inverter to boost output, then there's not a massive benefit to putting that form factor into Powerwall anyway. The 4680 Powerwall, the 4680 form factor, specifically the tabless electrode, allows just tons of throughput through those batteries. But if we're supplementing from solar, not such an advantage. So it's contrary to the rumor that I'd reported on in episode 12, but, I would put more weight into the comments from the management team than I would from a rumor, even if it was an employee that, has some real insight into what's coming. Especially with Elon, things can change really quickly at Tesla, and if cell supply is constrained, the rumor is even less likely to come true. Let's take a look at a fourth clip.
Yeah, and we do expect to see, significant increases in supply from our existing suppliers, in addition to the cells that Tesla is making. So it's both. Sometimes I get questions from our cell suppliers of like, are we just gonna make all the cells ourselves? And then we're like, no, please make as many as you possibly can and supply them to us. We have a significant unmet demand in stationary storage. Megapack is basically sold out through the end of next year, I believe.
Yeah.
We have a massive backlog in Powerwall demand. The demand of Powerwall versus production is an insane mismatch. Now, part of that problem is also the semiconductor issue. So we use a lot of the same chips in the Powerwall as we do in the car. So it's like, which one do you want to make, cars or Powerwalls? So we need to make cars, so therefore Powerwall production has been reduced. But as that semiconductor shortage is alleviated, then we can vastly ramp up Powerwall production. I think we have a chance of hitting an annualized rate of 1 million units of Powerwall next year, maybe, sort of on the order of 20,000 a week. But again, dependent on cell supply and semiconductors. But in terms of demand, I think there's probably demand for in excess of 1 million Powerwalls, and actually just a vast amount of megapacks for utilities. As the world transitions to a sustainable energy production, solar and wind are intermittent, and by their nature really need battery packs in order to provide a steady flow of electricity. And when you look at all of the utilities in the world, this is a vast amount of batteries that are needed. That's why long term we really think sort of combined Tesla and suppliers need to produce at least 1,000 gigawatt hours a year, and maybe 2,000 gigawatt hours a year.
1 million Powerwalls or more per year. Elon puts that at a chance, which is a technical percentage equivalent to not a chance, since priority is still going to automotive. This is even worse since they're sharing chips And the value of a chip in a $10,000 Powerwall is way less than the value of a chip in a, I don't know, $40,000, $50,000, $150,000 car. So, I mean, honestly, if Tesla is to de-risk, they very well may take the inverter chip in-house so they don't have to rely on third parties to provide them. If they're short on chips for even the comparably dead simple Powerwall, it's absolutely worth them bringing that portion of chip fabrication in-house. Just a thought, just a speculation. So other things that I thought were interesting, the Megapack numbers are crazy. I mean, just the number of cells, crazy. But they are basically saying there's unlimited demand for Megapacks. And those Megapacks, they come with annual support revenue. If we've taken a look at the website, we should do that. Well, I don't know. It's a little bit outside the scope of this podcast. But, I expect that support is on top of the controller software and the AutoBidder software subscriptions. All of those things together are really going to make the energy side of the business sing. Other notables, there was no mention of the solar glass roof. Interesting, and probably a bad sign for the product. I mean, no mention of solar either. But, I mean, honestly, both products, they're having to be paired with storage. So I can see how Powerwall is really going to be the constraint there. And, I don't know, it's going to make talking about them essentially irrelevant for discussion during the earnings call. We won't cover any other news in the show. I think that's all we really needed to talk about. That was plenty. So let's take a quick breather and let's dive into the electricity bills and see how this year is comparing with last year. So here's the highest bill we had last year. This was the one that was due July of 2020, and it totaled $532.15. We used 1,984 kilowatt hours, which puts us at 26.8 cents per kilowatt hour. And here is the June 2021, or the one that's due in July 2021. It was only $156.10. We used 586 kilowatt hours from the grid, which puts us at a slightly lower 26.6 cents per kilowatt hour. And that's what I'm talking about. I mean, we're talking about, what, $375 in savings for a single month? That's what I like. And it's probably going to be the biggest delta of the year since June is the highest production month of the year. Longest days, of course. And I'd say I'm very excited to see these lower bills. Very, very excited. Now, there is some updated usage, right? So let's get over to the spreadsheet. I've taken the usage tab and I've updated it. So the updated usage tab on the spreadsheet is now called Usage and Charges. And it covers May 2020 through today. Not a ton of data yet, but everything is trending in the right direction. So if I just zoom in a bit, we can see here some of the numbers a little bit more clearly. This is showing all of the data, but you can get a zoom in of the usage chart. Blue is last year, red is this year, so our usage is down quite a bit. And then our rates, they follow the same curve, of course, so they're going to look quite similar. But you can see the dollars on the left-hand portion of the chart. Just giving you an idea of how much less we're paying. We're talking about, a third for last month's bill. We're really more like at a half for this month's bill. But something that's worth mentioning is they don't read the meter for each billing cycle, and there's a wrinkle since I'm not yet approved by the utility. I don't yet net meter, so I don't get credit for anything I'm sending back to the grid. I'm only going to see the benefit of pulling less from the grid. So I need to figure that back into the pay period, of course, the payback period for the whole system. And we'll see that effect as we drag out the approval process. That effect could get really bad. The horrible, horrible pain. But what can you do? So we'll save that detail for another podcast. And we're going to call it for episode, 18 now of the Tesla Power Podcast, the unofficial Tesla Energy community. I'm Aaron Brady. My referral code, I should bring that up. I don't bring it up very often. Well, I bring it up at every podcast, but I don't put it up on screen. So it's ts.la/Aaron62310. Go save some money. Go get some free supercharging. And let's do it again on the next video.